Good day, fish tankers. Most of us, especially when starting out in the hobby, keep community aquariums, which is simply an aquarium with different species of fish living together in it, often from all corners of the globe. The other thing that we seem obsessed about is the number 10. So as cliche as it is, I'm going to bring out my top 10 community fish. If you are interested in that, stick around. Okay guys and girls, most of these fish require easy or intermediate care. It's not necessarily all of them beginner fish, but they're also not overly fussy. They don't need huge aquariums, and they can go in your general sort of water parameters, pH 6.5 to 7.5, GH and KH somewhere in the middle. It's more important that it's stable. If there are any other requirements, I will tell you. So I'm going to count from the bottom all the way to 1. It's not an order of preference, number 1 being my top fish and number 10 the least favorite. I'm going to use the layers of an aquarium. I'm going to move from the bottom of a tank to the top of a tank, because you got fish that we want fish that utilize different areas of an aquarium, otherwise it gets crowded. And I'm going to end with a couple of centerpiece fish. So starting at the bottom, at number 10, we've got the good old Coolie Lauche. Now they're wonderful little squiggly, almost like little snakes swimming around the aquarium kind of fish that live on the bottom. They eat the leftover food, but also feed them a bit of a sinking pellet every now and then, every second day or so, but they do get enough food. And they've got this wonderful stripy color, and they move about the aquarium, and they go into all the crevices, and you even get them in a black color. Now, if you're going to keep one of them, you're never going to see that fish. It's going to be gone, and you won't see it again. It will almost never come out. But that's why you got to keep them in a group. They like being in a small group, because although they don't really swim in a shoal, if they have others of their kind around, they like to play around. They like to sort of all hang out together in a squiggly ball, and then you'll see them much more. So keep at least 4 or more of these Coolie Lauches, and they are fairly simple fish and very peaceful. Sticking at the bottom at number 9, we're going to put in an algae eater. Now, an algae eater, I've made many videos. You can go very badly wrong in your choices, but you can't really go wrong with a good old little Otto Cichlids, the dwarf suckermouth catfish. Now, they are great little fish, very peaceful. They do need company of their own kind, so keep at least 6 of them or more together in the aquarium. Another thing that they need is sometimes they need to be fed, especially if there's not enough algae. They eat the plaque algae, not the hair algae. So especially when you get them, sometimes they are undernourished in the shops. I like to feed them slices of blanched baby marrow. That works very well. You can use an algae wafer as well, but I prefer the baby marrow. I tend to overeat on the algae wafers. And another neat trick is, if you have a new piece of spiderwood in the aquarium, providing your tanks run in the zero ammonia or nitrite, that spiderwood forms a sort of a fungusy, fuzzy sort of overgrowth that doesn't look nice, but it's harmless. I put the Ottos in when you have a lot of that fuzz, because they feed on that biofilm. They'll clear it all up, and it will give them a nice nutritional boost, which is great for their health. Now at number 8, moving on up in the aquarium, sort of in the bottom half, but no longer on the substrate, we have a rosy tetra. Now I think that's a very underrated tetra. It's a heart-shaped tetra. It's a slightly bigger tetra, and they're very unfussy. The males will display to each other and chase around a bit like all tetras do, but it's generally harmless, and they leave other fish alone. It's just a bit of breeding behavior, and they have that nice pinkish color with a marked fins. A very nice underrated fish, and they don't grow as big as, say, the bleeding heart tetra. So you can keep them, I'd say a 2-foot tank, about 15 gallons, 60 liters is minimum. 100-liter tank is much better. I think that's around 29 gallon-ish if you're American. So that's the rosy tetra at number 8. Then at number 7, another fish that sort of occupies the middle to slightly below the middle, is one of my favorite tetras. That is, of course, the Cardinal Tetra. Beautiful neon blue, greenish blue stripe, and entire body covered with a deep red. More so than the neon tetra, it only goes half. I find these fish have become hardier over time. They're no longer as prone to disease, in my opinion. Tell me in the comment sections if you feel the same. I suspect there's more captive bred specimens coming into the hobby now. And having said that, they still require a bit of care. They're not as tough as a neon tetra. So if you have liquid rock, in other words, very hard water, rather stay away from the Cardinal Tetras. Mine are fine in pH 7.2, 7.5. They like softer water, but they're fine in that sort of range as well. But if you have got water that's pH 8 and very hard, stay away from the Cardinal Tetra rather. You're more likely to have success with a Neon Tetra. And they are shoaling fish. You need at least 6 of them. More would be much better. So that's the Cardinal Tetra at number 7. Coming in at number 6, there's another heart-shaped Tetra, and that's the Colombian Redfin Tetra. Another sort of fish that's often just overlooked in the hobby. We had the bright colors of a Cardinal, we had the pink of a Rosie, and this one has got a very light sort of metallic, bluish, shiny bodies, and they've got the red fins as the name indicate. They go a little bigger. I would put them in a 29 gallon, 100 liters minimum. A bit bigger would be even better. Bigger is always better. You can put tiny fish in huge tank and they can look great. And they swim a little bit higher. They're just above that middle strata of a tank. And they also, like all Tetras, a shoaling fish, so at least 6 of them, and they will look fantastic. Then after the Colombian Tetras, at number 5, I've got to include a Livebearer as well. I'll make another video about guppies. I revisited my youth and kept some guppies. Mollies can get a bit aggressive, swordtails as well, but I like the good old platy. Here's a bit of footage of platies swimming around. You get them in black and orange. I don't see that very nice deep red blackfin wagtail platy anymore. I'm struggling to find those. Let me know if you have. But they are very nice, peaceful little Livebearers in a planted tank. Depending on the tank mate, some of the baby fish will survive. And they are not aggressive and they don't bother anyone. But they do need a little bit of minerals in their tank. They don't like acidic, soft water. They never do well. They start shimmying like all the Livebearers that I know at least. Now, they used to tell us you've got to put salt in the water. That's not really the thing. They need a bit of minerals in the water. So they need a bit of KH and GH, and how you can do it, the easiest way is to add just a handful of crushed coral in a mesh bag in your filter, or just put a bit of crushed coral in your substrate. I've got dirted substrates, and there's a little bit of bone meal in that dirt, and that just gives you a KH of at least 6. If I have that, they tend to be happy. So they want water that's not below 7. They'll go a little bit below 7 if they were born there, but they need a little bit of minerals in the water, and then your platies will be happy. They also like munching a little bit on the algae as well as an added bonus. Now coming in at number 4, we go to the top of the aquarium. Now I've had this fish in previous videos, but I can't get away from it. It is a really tough little fish. It's a great beginner fish. It can even go in cold water in the summer. It can go outdoors in a mini pond, and I've even kept them with goldfish because they way too fast for goldfish, and that's a white cloud mountain minnow. Now you get 2 different varieties of them. You get the classical one, that's the more dark color with a fluorescent golden stripe, often called the poor man's Neon Tetra, and you've got a gold variety as well. That's just the shining little yellow gold fish. Very peaceful. The males will nip at each other and display among each other, just like Tetras do, but they leave your other fish alone. You even get long fin varieties these days, and they will stay there around the top of a tank, and their colors really start popping if it's a nice planted tank, and they're very, very easy fish. Now going on from the white cloud mountain minnow, staying at the top, at number 3, we've got the Harlequin Rasbora. There are 2 different varieties. There's the lamb chop Rasbora as well, that's got less black, but my favorite is the Harlequin Rasbora. In your aquarium shops, they don't look like much because they're small. They're rather drab little fish with that black triangle. But if you put them in a planted tank and you feed them well, they really, really start growing a little bit. They still remain small fish, but those colors really come up. Once again, it's a shoaling fish, at least 6 or more of them, and they will occupy that top space of the aquarium. I have once had a 4-foot tank, 55 gallon in American language, and I've had nothing in there. I think maybe it was a bristlenose pleco, but nothing else than a show of Cardinal Tetras and Harlequin Rasboras, and it looked absolutely terrific. Yeah, I think there was at least 50 of each, and you had the Cardinals all there in the sort of middle, and the Harlequins all there on the top, and it looked made for a fantastic display. So that's for Harlequin Rasbora. So now we've covered the layers. Now we're going to talk about specimen fish or centerpiece fish. It's a new thing. We never had that previously in the hobby. But that's sort of like a fish that you have just one, maybe two of, and they sort of out there on their own, and it's not really a shoaling fish, but they sort of cause a vocal point. Now, often people use Siamese fighters or bettas or dwarf gouramis. The two species of fish have similar personalities. They can be a bit bolshy and have individual personalities. You can get a fish that's a complete ale and will chase everything in the tank, or you can get one that's kind of passive, but I'm not going to go for that choice. You know, the bettas is a hit and miss sometimes they don't do well with the other fish. And the dwarf gourami these days, they carry a lot of diseases. I've got some dwarf gouramis again and I'm trying them out. I think I've got some better stock now, but I would rather go for, coming in at number 2, the little Honeygar Army. It's a very nice bright yellow. There are some color variety in them, and they are peaceful little fish. They leave your other fish alone. They don't chase them around. I would just put a single male in there, but you can also put a male and a female in there. If it's a nicely planted tank, you know, they have enough. If a male gets too amorous, the female can get away, and they're not aggressive fish. So the Honeygar Army, you also get them in a sort of a orange or a more red variety, and they sometimes call a red robin, that variety. That comes in at number 2. I think that's a nice centerpiece fish that can work in a small tank. It will work at 1.5 foot, you know, 10 gallons upwards, and it might even work in a slightly smaller tank. But as I said, you can keep small fish in big tanks as well. They don't have to be in small tanks. Now at number 1 is a bit of a different choice, and there I have a group of dwarf cichlids, and I'm going to go for the Apistogramma. Now you will say, cichlids, no ways. There's an important asterisk to this. There's an important caveat, if you will. If you put a pair of them in your community tank, they will eventually pair off. They'll stake out their little cave and corner of a tank, and then they'll protect their babies and chase all your fish to one corner. So I'm not talking about that. Recently I've seen a lot of odd males in the hobby in my local fish store, and I picked up Apistogramma McMasteri. So just keep a male on its own in the community tank. You can keep a female on its own, but the male's got better colors. So a male Apistogramma McMasteri, like you see swimming around in my big tank, it turned out to be a very nice little fish. It's not shy at all. It holds its own with a bigger fish. It doesn't bother the smaller fish. It's always there at feeding time. I would recommend have a slightly bigger tank, at least 100 liters, 29 gallons, a 3-foot tank if it's in a community of fish. And it becomes a very nice little personality fish on its own. Not only Apistogramma McMasteri, you can use Apistogramma Hongsloi or any of those Apistos. Get yourself a single male of the rest of your community fish, and it can work out very well. So that is my top 10 list of community fish. Tell me what you think, what would you take off, what would you maybe add, and if you like the content, please give it a thumbs up. I would greatly appreciate that. Please hit the subscribe button, and until I see you again, keep taking good care of those domestic denizens of the deep.